50 books this summer. 50 books. You can probably tell I didn't really do much this summer in terms of having a life, and that would be correct. Guys, what's up? It's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel. I have not done a reading wrap up since May. In June, I went to Disneyland for my birthday, and then after I got home, I was just kind of exhausted and did nothing but read for like the whole rest of the summer. I am a teacher, so August has been a lot of classroom prep and everything like that. So I just thought, let's do a summer wrap up. So here are all 50 of the books that I read for June, July, and August. Okay, so starting us off for our June reads, I'm just gonna go as quickly as I can. I started off with What Lies Beyond the Veil. This is probably one of my absolute all-time favorite fantasy series now. I absolutely loved this book. If you love ACOTAR and From Blood and Ash, this is a good series to try. I don't want to talk too much about it. This is the first book in the series, but basically, Estrella, sorry. She is a human, and she lives on the human side of like this veil wall thingy, and the Fae are on the other side. And at the beginning of the story, the veil falls, and all of the Fae that were on the Fae side are now hunting for their mates. Estrella finds herself on the run because she doesn't want to be hunted down by her Fae mate. So she, like I said, she goes running. She meets a guy named Calum. A lot happens. It does end on a cliffhanger. It was amazing. I did read this twice, so that does count in my 50 reads for the summer. Then I read Torn by Carian. This was a really good age gap romance, forbidden romance. This is father's best friend. This was pretty taboo because her father's best friend has been taking care of her since she was really little, but I actually love the story. Carian does a really, really good job at writing taboo romances that seem believable. This is on KU, so go give it a try if you love some age gap and taboo. Okay, next I read Broken Bonds. This is like the first in a 5 or 6 series that is still going on. It is fantasy. It is reverse harem. I don't remember a whole lot about this because I was pretty bored, and that really upsets me because a lot of people have been reading this series all summer, and I was really hoping I would like it, but I'm gonna probably go back and try again with the second book. I did make it halfway until I was just like, I can't do this anymore. But what's really cool about this one is that it's like another situation with fated mates, except in this world, you can have more than one fated mate. And so our leading lady happens to have 5 guys that are all like fated to belong to her. So it's really, really good. Like, it started off really good, and then it hit a slow mark. So I have to go back and try it again. But if that does sound intriguing to you and you like reverse harems and fantasy fated mates, go try that one. Then I read Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I have mentioned a few times, I'm not the biggest Coho fan. Like, she doesn't release books, and I'm like not one of those people screaming, oh my god, I have to read this ASAP. But I actually did like this one. I think out of all the Coho books I have read, this one was probably more of a believable romance to me. I do find Coho books to be kind of toxic romances. Like, don't even get me started on Ugly Love. Okay, anyway, but I really liked this one. So at the beginning of the story, Bea, her mother has overdosed and died, and so she needs to find a place to live. So she calls her father, who lives in Texas, and she asks if she can come stay with him for the summer. She does not tell her father that her mother is dead, which, yeah, okay. So she arrives in Texas. He is staying at in a beach town for the summer. There she meets Samson. He's a photographer, local rich boy. They hit it off. It's just a really cute summer romance, and I read this in like a few hours. Just a really quick, easy read. In June is my birthday month, so I had to be a basic bitch and read Birthday Girl. Penelope Douglas is my absolute favorite author, so I knew I was gonna like this one, and I did. It is an age gap romance. If you don't know, Jordan is our leading lady, Pike is our leading man. Pike is the father of Jordan's no good piece of shit boyfriend. At the very beginning of the book, basically her boyfriend makes it so they lose their apartment and are homeless. So Pike offers for them to come and stay with him. Now, prior to them getting kicked out, Pike had actually met Jordan on her birthday night. She was sitting alone at the movies. He sat with her, they hit it off, and then later that night they find out that their mutual friend, son, boyfriend, whatever, is in fact Pike's son. So the story's gonna kick off from there. There is no cheating in here like with Jordan herself, so I just want to like clarify that if you don't like the cheating trope. Jordan herself does not cheat on her boyfriend with Pike. I did turn 30 in June, so I did pick this up at the beginning of the summer. It is Loveless and Fancy Ships, and our leading character is turning 30 during the summer. She is a yacht stewardess, so if you've ever seen Below Deck, she is one of the people that caters to the wealthy people whining on a boat. She meets the new chef, who happens to also move into the apartments next door to her apartments. So it's kind of like a workplace romance. He is a single father, so you have a single father trope here in here too. But I just really liked her personal journey with getting ready to turn 30. She did have a little bit of grief in this book, as her nephew had previously died some months before, and she was really close with her nephew. So at the beginning of the summer, she also finds her nieces staying with her all summer to kind of give her sister and her brother-in-law a break with everything that they've been dealing with. But I really liked it. It was cute, wholesome. I will say it leans a little bit more towards women's fiction than romance, but the romance was really good. It was cute, wholesome. It was closed door though, so just an FYI. 1% of You by Michelle Gross, sorry if I messed that up. This is a single mother trope book. This was really, really good. It is so underrated. The cover's awful, but please ignore that. So our heroine, at the beginning of the story, she finds herself newly pregnant from her partner. She already has a 4-year-old daughter with him. When she comes home from work to tell him that they are going to have another baby, she actually catches him in bed with her cousin. Then you're going to flash forward months later. She is now very heavily pregnant, and she is doing this all on her own. Her ex basically bounced out. In the apartments next door to where they live, there is a house that goes up for sale, and in that house moves in a very grumpy tattoo artist. And how they meet is at the grocery store. He gets in a fight over the last bag of chips with her daughter, and so her daughter runs up to mom and says, "That scary man stole my chips." So of course it turns into like this whole thing. It's cute, it's funny. I loved his relationship with her daughter. He just was one of those guys, when it's a single mom trope, that goes above and beyond to do everything he can to help her out. And this is such an underrated book. So if you love the single parent trope, go give this one a try. Ugh, sorry. 50 books to get through, people. Okay, then we have Dear Ava by Isla Madden Mills. I read this one on the plane when I was on my way to Disneyland, so there's not a whole lot I remember, but what I do remember from it is there was an incident in high school with Ava and the football team where she gets raped one night. Well, what ends up happening is when she tries to report it, no one takes her side, and the entire football team and the school basically end up hating her. So then you flash forward a year later, she comes back and returns to school, and no one's treating her very well. And then she starts getting like secret admirer letters from somebody who says that they believe her and everything like that. And our hero guy, I can't remember his name, but he was on the football team and everything like that. And so it's kind of a bully romance, like I said, because the football team is really mad at her because she got them in trouble, but then nobody believed her. It was like a mess. Like I said, this was months ago that I read this, but I did enjoy it while I was reading it at the time. So if any of those aspects interest you, it's on KU. And I read Tide by Carian. This is the second book from the Torn book. It's a duology because this one is about the brother of our hero from the first book. This is probably one of my new favorite books of the year. This is one of those ones where both of our characters are so completely destroyed and broken at the beginning of the story that really they are the only two people that can make each other happy and get each other out of it. So at the very beginning of the story, Tyler, our hero, he lives alone in the woods. He's lived alone for years. He has burns on his skin and everything, and he's very scarred, and so the townspeople are very scared of him. Well, one night as he's in the woods, he actually comes across a hole in the ground. Well, it turns out to be some kind of shelter underneath, like some hidden bunker, and in it he finds Holly, our heroine, and she's a teenage girl at the time, and she's been locked under there for a really, really long time. And he pulls her out and rescues her, and he kills her captor. And they end up going their separate ways. She's reunited with her family. It turns out this man had kidnapped her when she was a little girl and has been sexually abusing her ever since. So you're going to fast forward some months and some years and some time because Holly is readjusting to the world and everything like that. So you're going to fast forward about 2 years, and Holly's parents, they treat her like glass. They don't really let her come home. She is staying in these apartments that are meant for people, like rehabilitations and stuff like that. So it's kind of a safety net for her, and her parents just, they don't really feel comfortable with having her home because they've had a different family since she left. And so the whole situation is just totally screwed up. Tyler's had his own horrible, horrible, tragic past. And so Holly just ends up going looking for him, and they form a really good bond. This was definitely a slow burn, but their friendship connection, this is another little bit of an age gap one. This book also got me out of a slump. So if you are looking for books that get you out of a slump, try this one. It's an absolute goodie. I am definitely going to be rereading this one a lot in the future. I read The Counselors by Jessica Goodman. This was a YA murder mystery series, or not series, book that took place at a summer camp. It was pretty good. I mean, it kind of kept me entertained, but it wasn't like the greatest murder mystery I've ever read. I don't really have much to say about this. All I have to say is that our girl, she is a camp counselor. She's worked here for years. She's been a part of this camp for years. Like the first or second day of camp, there's a dead body that ends up on the beach. It happens to be her ex-boyfriend. There's a whole story. She's been in trouble with the law before, so there's a lot of like past, like flipping back and forth between the past and the present to tie all these mysteries together. Like I said, I don't have a lot to say. It was boring. I rated it like 3 stars. Moving on. Okay, then I read Honestly, I'm Totally Faking It. This was a birthday gift from a very good book friend of mine. This is one of her favorite books of this year. This was really, really good. So it's like a politician kind of romance. So our leading lady, she gets hired to be a PR kind of assistant to some rich guy that she's never met before. And so she shows up at his building, and I think she spills something on herself and no one's home. So she jumps in the shower to clean herself off. And when she gets out of the shower, like she's wearing a towel and her boobs fall out. And when she walks out, our hero, he is sitting there being interviewed on TV because he's going to be running for mayor. Well, he ends up saving her and saying that this is his girlfriend, obviously, because he's, you know, trying to run for mayor, and what is a naked lady doing in his apartment? So they kind of go with it. She agrees to fake date him to boost his image and everything like that. She ends up bringing new and genuine, exciting ideas to the team for his campaign, and it just makes him fall for her even more. I absolutely loved this story. This is a single POV, but that's okay because is it Press Preston, he went by Press. He is very type A OCD, so he's always planning things and everything like that, and I think I liked not having his POV because you never knew what his opinions were or what he was thinking. So when he would say like these swoon-worthy lines, it was a surprise and it just made you really, really happy. But I absolutely love this book. If you love fake dating, try to pick this one up. Okay, and then wrapping up the month of June, I read the Kings of Quarantine series by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. These are the Twisted Sisters that write Zodiac Academy. This is not a fantasy, but it is a reverse harem, and oh my, are you in for a wild ride. So the sisters wrote this book when COVID had first kicked off, so it is a quarantine story, obviously. This takes place at a private boarding school. It is a bully romance. Tatum, our leading lady, she shows up at the beginning of senior year. She is brand new. There is a virus that is currently going on in the world, so these students are safer at boarding school than they are going out in the real world. So the school gets put on lockdown when the virus starts getting worse. She, at the beginning of the year, she gets along really well with Blake. He's a football player. They do hook up. But the very next morning after they hook up, he finds out from his father that Tatum's father could very well be involved with the scientist that released this virus onto the world. And it just so happens that Blake's mother had passed away from the virus some months prior. So he is pissed. He is out for revenge, and he recruits his two best friends, Kion and Saint, to help bring her down. And oh my gosh, the things that they do to her. I wanted to throw my Kindle across the room. It had me going, but I think those are the best kinds of reads, is when they get you like reacting like that. So this is a 4-guy reverse harem. So the 4th guy is going to end up being a Professor Montgomery at this school. There are 4 books in the series. It is a little bit of a slow burn, which I appreciate. Reverse harems are hard for me to read because I don't like it when smut is the entire plot of a book. This one had a lot of plot, and it had a lot of building towards the love side with the harem. And I just, like I said, I had such a wild and crazy time reading this series. But look up trigger warnings, please. And now moving on to the month of July. Okay, so starting us off with July, I did read an arc. This is called Unexpected by Elizabeth Aton. Anton, name's right here, sorry. This is another single parent trope romance. This is a single father. He is a rock star. I don't want to talk too much about this book because I think you need to go in blind. Please go in blind. It's going to give you the best experience, but just no, it's a goodie. I don't want to talk too much about it because I really think you need to go in blind. And I read Souls Unfractured by Tillie Cole. This is the 3rd book in the Hades Hangman series, I think, if that's the name of the series. I read the first 2 books back in January, and I was obsessed with them. I absolutely loved them. I had started the 3rd book right after, but I think I just felt so burned out with reading them all back to back that I did pause it and put it away for a while. But I did pick it back up in July, and I finished it, and I absolutely loved it. This is a motorcycle club gang companion novel series, but they are very heavy on trigger warnings because the men in the series, obviously they're from a motorcycle club gang, but our ladies are all from a horrible religious cult that has basically kept them imprisoned their entire lives and used as sex slaves since they were children. And so they find themselves escaped from here, and each of these girls just gets with a different guy. And so this is Maddie and Flame's story, and Maddie and Flame just are they're 2 tragic, broken characters. And this was just such a wholesome romance. I absolutely loved it. But if you are intrigued with any of those, go pick up the 1st book. The 1st book is really good. Our guy in the 1st one, he's a selective mute, which makes it really interesting. But this is just a really good series, and I am excited to continue. I think there's like 9 or 10 books in the series, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll take me a while, but obviously I have all the time in the world to read. So. And then I read Lessons in Corruption by Giana Darling. This is the 1st book in the Fallen Men series. This is another motorcycle club gang. yeah, I didn't want to read this book. I'm gonna be honest. I wanted to skip and go to the second book because not a whole lot of people like the first book, and I can see why. It is an age gap teacher-student romance, but it's reversed where the female is the older one. And I didn't know how I would feel about a woman in her mid-20s hooking up with an 18-year-old, but it took me by surprise. I actually loved it. So, our leading lady at the beginning of the story, she is in a really boring marriage. She's actually married to a guy who's like 18, 20 years older than her. Her parents kind of groomed her for this marriage when she was in high school because he was the neighbor or something. Really creepy on the parents' part. Like, yeah, anyway, so she ends up divorcing him, and a few months pass, and she just wants to have some fun in her life. So she meets King at a bar. They go out, they have fun, they hit it off, and like the next day or something, she discovers that he is a new student in her English class. I think she taught English. She does teach at a very prestigious private school, and King is very smart, so he is a new transfer student that got into this school. And she is very like, I'm your teacher, I can't do anything with you, but he is like a very possessive alpha man, like, nope, I like you, we're gonna do this thing. So I really enjoyed this one. It was another fun read. Okay, then I read Blindside by Carrie Steiner. I think that's what it was. This is a fake dating football college romance. I love this book. It reminded me a lot of The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So if you've read that and you love it, I think you would like this one. What I liked about it is other than The Deal is with this guy, he has an ex-girlfriend that dumped him at the beginning of the school year, and he's been head over heels in love with her since high school, and so he's trying to get her back, and that's how these two end up fake dating, is that he's trying to make her jealous. And so there is a lot that goes on with the ex-girlfriend when our characters finally get together, and it makes it really interesting with the plot and everything like that. But this was a goodie. I know this one is blowing up everywhere right now, so if you haven't read it yet and you love fake dating, college sports romance, go give it a shot. We have Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. This is kind of a single parent trope. Diana, our leading lady, before the story picks up, she finds herself as the sole guardian of her two young nephews because her brother and sister-in-law have passed away. So when the book begins, they have just moved into a brand new house in a brand new neighborhood, and across the street is her very hunky, very grumpy neighbor, Dallas. So Dallas is actually going to end up becoming the head Little League coach for Diana's nephew, Josh, which I loved. My husband is a coach. He coaches like every sport my son plays, including baseball. So there was a lot of Little League and baseball stuff in here. And every time Diana was just sitting on the bleachers getting judged by the moms for her age and everything like that, I just felt it in my soul. It was very near and dear to my heart. And I love this book. Dallas was just another top tier book boyfriend. All right, and then I read Addicted for Now. This is the third book in the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series. I am loving this, you guys. Lily and Lo, they are nerdy. They're a train wreck, and I'm here for them. Okay, I'm here for them. So this one, obviously, we're still on Lily and Lo by the third book. We haven't gotten to any of the other characters, but this is going to talk more about their addictions and how they can maintain their relationship with each other while trying to maintain their addictions. The first book, obviously, is them enabling each other with their addictions. The second book, they are separated because they are dealing with their addictions. And by this third one, they are finally reunited, but they're trying to learn how to be in a relationship and a couple with dealing with their addictions as well. So I really love this, just the character moments, the found family trope that these books have. I know they are overhyped, and I'm telling you guys, I bought the first book last year, and I waited so long to read it because I thought they were overhyped because everybody was talking about them. But I love them. They just feel good. When you're reading them with these characters, they make you feel part of the family. And I love that. So I'm so excited to continue the series. My next book is Rose and Connor, which I love, academic rivals to lovers. I'm here for it. Okay, and then I read Fighting Silence and Fighting Shadows by Ali Martinez. These were both part of a trilogy. I still need to read the third book. I started it and then I just kind of put it away for a little bit because I had binged these two back to back. So this was for disability representation for the month of July. So the first book, our hero, he learns like at the age of 12 or 13 that he is slowly going deaf, and that by the time he's a young adult, he will fully lose his hearing, and that's something that he has to deal with. And so he meets our heroine, and this is a friends to lovers story, and they are like the best of friends in high school, and they're there for each other. And she is like the one person in his life that he can always fall back on whenever he's upset. When you're reading his POV, he's just saying, I need to get to her, I need to be with her, she's the only person that can get me out of this. He is also a boxer, so there's going to be a lot of like cage fighting and stuff in this. It was really good. And then the second book is about the next brother, and he actually is in a wheelchair because something happens to him in the first book where he does find himself paralyzed from the waist down. And so this was just another really good one. And then the third book, which I need to go back to, it's the youngest brother, and he has the same disability that his older brother has, where he is also slowly going deaf to the point where he will be completely 100% deaf in the near future. And so it's just a really interesting concept, I guess, to know that something is going to happen to you and dreading it for that long, and just the fear that one day it's going to be gone. And I think that's just what I loved about these stories so much. So if you like books with disability representation, these were really good. Okay, then I read Wet. Yeah, don't ask me why that's the name of the book. It's about a college swim team, so that's why it's called Wet. But I loved this book. So this is Insta Love, and normally Insta Love is an Insta don't for me, but from the reviews, people were saying go try it anyway. So this was a quick, easy college read. So our heroine, she had previously gone on a date with a member of the swim team, and he tried to rape her. It didn't happen. She ended up getting away, but she tried to report him, and so he's basically out to get her. So at the very beginning of the book, she finds herself in a situation where he's trying to drown her in the school pool. And so our hero ends up saving her. He ends up falling for her, and it basically makes it his mission to protect her and save her and kill the guy that did this to her. So I really liked it. I can tell it's going to be the first in a companion novel series because there was stuff going on towards the end with his best friend and a new girl that was pretty interesting. So if you like college sports romances, this is another good one to try. Alright, then I read A Court of Wings and Ruin, which, as we all know, is the third book in the ACOTAR series. So I'm not going to talk much about this. As you know, it is just a continuation off of Mist and Fury. Mist and Fury is still my favorite book, but I did love this one. I did tab and highlight a lot. I can say, after reading this one, I am so excited to read Silver Flames. There is so many little teasers in here for Nesta and Cassian's relationship, and I'm just so excited. So that was Rings and Ruin. It was another good read. Okay, then I read The Roughest Draft. Everybody was saying if you like beach read and book lovers, this is like a good combination of them. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite. I definitely still think that beach read is superior to me, but this is one where they are co-authors. They used to write books together, and then they had a falling out, and so they never worked together again. However, you're going to flash forward some years later, and the publishing company, they want another book that the two of them technically still owe because their contract said that they had one more book to do. So they decide to share a beach house in Florida together for a few months to write this book. This is going to alternate between the past and the present, so you're going to see like what happened with their falling out. I will say, out of every book I've ever read with past sexual tension and yearning for each other, this was definitely one of the better ones I've read. It had some really good spice scenes, I will say. Yeah. Then I read The Sinner by Emma Scott. This I think is going to be a really good romance to read for Halloween time. It's a great gothic one. So this kind of reminded me of, once again, Fated Mates, but it's not a well, I guess it could be kind of a fantasy. Anyway, it takes place in the modern day, and our heroine, she ends up finding a naked man on the street, and he's like passed out or something, and he ends up being a fallen angel, or like I think it's a demon actually. And well, you're gonna have both of their POVs, and you come to find out that he's been connected to her for like centuries, and he's been watching over her in her new lifetimes for centuries. This is another one I think you should go in blind, because I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but this was just another really, really good one. I read The Bridge Kingdom. I listened to it on Audible because it's free on there, and this was such a good one. This is another good enemies to lovers fantasy romance. This one's really popular, so just go give this a try if you love betrayals in your fantasy romances, and if you love your betrayals from the lady instead of the male. This was a good one. It does end on a cliffhanger, so I did start the second book a few weeks ago. I just need to finish it. I read The Crowned by Hate and The Crowned by Fate duet by Amo Jones. If you have ever read Amo Jones, then you know you are in for a complete and utter mindfuck in pretty much every single book you read. I had read Sicko back in January, and I absolutely loved it, and it did have a mindfuck in it. You get to that point and you're like, what? And it was the same in this duet. So at the very end of the first book, you think you have it figured out, and you're like, okay, how is this going to be a second book? Like, everything is wrapping up really happy. Like, there's even a time jump to an epilogue. And what I really liked about it was Amo put in the book, if you like happy endings, stop reading here. If you want something different, continue to read. So you could stop at that point and the book would end at a happy ending. But if you want to keep reading, like I said, oh, there is such a twist that is thrown in there. And I was questioning my brain for a lot. Like, am I like reading this right? Am I understanding this right? Yeah, go in blind. This was business, mafia, all of that. Just go in blind, please. If you like a good mindfuck, go in blind. Okay, then I read Welcome to the Dark Side by Giana Darling. This is the second book in the Fallen Men series. This one, it disappointed me. I was really looking forward to this one because everybody seems to love it. It is an age gap. Quite a bit of an age gap between Zeus, who is the president of the motorcycle club gang, and Lulu, who is a 17-year-old girl who has leukemia. And I liked the build-up, I liked the friendship and everything, but I think when it got to the halfway point, I was just bored. I was really bored, and I just was like, okay, they're together. I just don't really, like I said, I was bored. That's really all there was to it. I was bored reading this one. I do want to read the third one because it does interest me more. It's about Zeus's daughter and a cop, and so I think that whole gist of a motorcycle girl and a cop just sounds very interesting to me. But yeah, this one just, it was a dud. Okay, then I read The Gravity of Us by Brittany Cherry. This is the fourth book in the Element series. So none of the couples know each other, just each book has to do with like a certain element. So you have air, fire, water, and earth, I guess. This is another one I would say to go in blind. I really think you're gonna get the best overall experience if you do. But our heroine, she owns a flower shop. Our hero is an author, a very grumpy author, and circumstances at the beginning of the book find him where he basically needs her help for a lot of things. That's all I'm gonna say. Like I said, please go in blind with this one, but I did really enjoy this read. And then wrapping up July, I read Caraval. Ugh, you guys, these have been sitting on my shelves since last October, and I don't know why. I slept on it for so long because I was absolutely and utterly obsessed with these books. I read each of them in one day. I read them all back to back because I had to find out what happens. But basically, if you don't know what this series is about, is so our leading characters are two sisters. So the first book, Caraval, is going to cover Scarlet. And then the second book, Legendary, is going to cover her sister, Donatella. And then the third book is going to alternate their POVs. And each girl has a guy. So basically, the story is that Caraval is like a carnival thingy that comes to town every year, but it's real magic. It's an actual game, and Scarlett's wanted to go her whole life to this game, and so she finally finds herself invited. She and Donatella get escorted there by Julian, who is going to be Scarlett's love interest. And when they arrive, she discovers that Donatella is actually missing, and Donatella is the person that you have to find in order to win this year's Caraval. So there's a lot of like game clues and references in here. What I loved about these is sometimes what you think you're seeing, you're not actually seeing. There are morally gray villain men here as love interests. I don't want to talk too much about Donatella and who her love interests are because it's going to ruin plot twists and spoilers and all of that, but just know that this is such a good YA fantasy series. If you have made it this far and you are still watching, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And drop a jack-o'-lantern emoji if you've made it this far, because I love Halloween. I'm like all ready for Halloween. But anyway, now we are moving on to the month of August, finally. So for August, starting us off, I read Dreams of the Dudley by Adelaide Forrest. This was the first book in a Mafia duet. I had read a previous Mafia series by this author last year, and I will say the writing style isn't the greatest, but if you are looking for a true Mafia series where the guy is so possessive, like he's willing to put a gun to the lady's head to force her to marry him, check out this author. That was the previous series I had read. This one was a little bit tamer, but it was the first book. It's just a Mafia one. She was promised to him when they were kids, but something happens where his family ends up getting ousted from the Mafia, but he still wants her, and so he's been following her for some years, and he has all these plans to get her back and make her his. And it was just a good one. It doesn't end on a cliffhanger. I think the second book just came out, so yeah. Okay, then I read All the Truths and All the Lies duet by Rena Kent. I think this might be my last books by Rena Kent. I had read some previous ones back in January, and they start off really strong, and then for me, they just all end up getting boring. And this one, the premise, it started off amazing, and then I just did not like where it went. So the beginning of the story, our heroine finds herself waking up in the hospital with amnesia. She has no recollection of what has been going on, and our hero is basically sitting there and, you know, coming across as a very protective, very concerned, worried boyfriend. Well, when the nurse leaves the room, he like whispers in her ear, "I'm going to get you, you monster." Like, he refers to her as a monster. And so you're kind of wondering what's going on, and he ends up taking her home to his house because he convinces the hospital that that's where she should be. And so she's trying to figure out like her memories and what's been going on and like who he actually is to her. And like I said, it started off really, really, really great, and then it just it tanked, and it didn't need to be a duet. It really didn't need to be a duet, and I think that was my problem with it, was because it had such a great build-up, and then I think the author was like, this needs to be a duet, so where can I throw in some random shit that doesn't matter to try to like expand this into something more. But yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea. Okay, then I had An Arc of the DoOver by T.L. Swan. This was such a disappointment for me. I love the Miles High Club books. I absolutely love them. The second one is my favorite. The first one is also good. The third one is not as good as the first two, but I still love it. so much that I would read it again. This one just felt like it was such a different story than the other three. In fact, the only times that I felt like I was actually reading a Miles High book was when the other Miles brothers were making a cameo appearance. But I didn't like Christopher. He was a man whore piece of crap. Hayden, there was nothing memorable about her other than the fact that she works on a farm with cows. She was a pushover. She was not feisty. She did not fight back like Emily, Claire, and Kate all did. And plus what I love about the other three is I love workplace romances, office romances, and this one wasn't, because basically Christopher, he wants a life change, and so he decides to backpack across Europe for a year. So you're not even taking place in an office environment, and some of the jokes were just really, really cringy, and I didn't find them funny. And yeah, like I said, I was just really disappointed in this, so I'm just going to pretend that this book doesn't exist. Okay, then I read The Summer of Broken Rules. I was so excited for this one, and unfortunately, this was another disappointment for me. This was really boring. I did not buy the romance at all. It was not very believable. I think they were really good as friends. They did have some really good connections, but I just didn't think they had a lot of chemistry. I think I would have liked this book more if it was a fiction that was really focused more on the assassin game that was played between all the family members and all the family members itself, because they did really mention the extra family members a lot, and I think it took away from the romance, and that was my issue. So I think if this was a fiction and not a romance, I would have rated it higher, but as a romance, I just didn't vibe with it, and I took several weeks to read this because I was just so bored. So clearly the beginning of August was really awful reading for me, and I was thinking I was going to become in a really big slump, but then I read Phantom by Greer Rivers. I read this on KU, and I had to order the physical copy because I was so obsessed with this book. This is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, and I want to start by saying I had never seen Phantom of the Opera prior to reading this book. So this is a retelling. It takes place in the modern day, and it does have mafia vibes to it, as our Phantom is kind of like the head of a mafia, kind of. There's like rival mafia families, kind of. This takes place in New Orleans. And this whole book is chef's kiss. Absolutely. So if you love retellings and you love Phantom of the Opera, give this one a shot. It's a dark romance. There's just so much I could say about this book. I may do like an in-depth spoiler-free video on this because I love it so much, but what I do like about this book is that it is like a play, so it is set in acts. So like you have act 1, scene 1. It just has really pretty artwork and pages in the book. It was just a perfect 5-star read for me. Okay, then I read another amazing 5-star read, and that was Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. This is a book that has kind of started popping off on Instagram and TikTok towards the spring, summertime. This is a historical pirate dark romance, so please look up trigger warnings. This is kind of a love triangle, as Bennett, she is our heroine. She is a ruthless pirate captain, and she basically finds herself torn between two men, one of which is her pirate captain husband, who she's been separated from for 2 years, and the other is a commodore of the British Royal Navy. There's a huge plot twist thrown in here towards the end. I absolutely love this book. Go try it. Okay, and then for fun, I reread The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I read this last year. It's one of my favorite comfort books. So yeah, fake dating, college romance, it's hockey. We all know about this book. Then I read Penpal on KU. This was a brand new release. Oh my gosh, this was another good one. This was a different read from anything I've ever read before. I don't want to talk too much about it. I think it's another one you want to go in blind, but I will say that if you do read the blurb of the book, I don't think it's the best blurb for this story. because I feel like how the book is described is not really actually what's happening with the story itself. But I will say, to get you intrigued, the beginning of the story, our heroine, she is at the funeral for her late husband. She's basically burying him, and then she comes home and she has a letter from an inmate at a prison saying, "I'm waiting for you." And so clearly your story's gonna go from there, but I would say definitely go in blind, because the plot twist at the end of this book, I was like, okay, I don't hate this. I actually love this even more now. So yes. And then I reread What Lies Beyond the Veil. So the second book just came out, and I was beyond lucky and grateful to have been placed on the ARC team for this series. So I did get the ARC of the second book, so I had to reread this one before the second one, and I did annotate this time. So obviously this was another 5-star read for me. And then right after, I started the second book, which is What Hunts Inside the Shadows. I don't have my physical copy. It is on its way in the mail because my ARC was on my Kindle, which is unfortunate, but I still got the book early, so I'm not going to complain. I am not going to talk too much about the plot because, you know, it's basically like Blood and Ash, ACOTAR. It's very similar to those vibes, and it's, you know, when you pick up with the second book, it's moments after the first book ended, so it is a cliffhanger. It's fated mates, all of that. I cannot push this series enough on people. I absolutely am obsessed with it. So if you like fantasy, fated mates, ACOTAR, From Blood and Ash, I cannot stress this enough to go try this series. Almost done, you guys. We're almost done. I have 4 left. Okay, so Be Still My Heart by Emily McIntyre and Salvar Miller. This was a murder mystery romance plot. So Lincoln, our guy, he lives in a coastal Maine town. He's like a fisherman who goes lobster fishing or something like that, and he actually pulls a dead body out of the water. And so Sloane, our heroine, she is actually a detective. She gets called in from like the next town over to come solve this case because the police in this town are completely incapable of doing their jobs. And Lincoln starts to discover that there are similarities between her and his former female best friend that had been killed when they were little kids. And so it's just very interesting with that story, and I loved this romance. I love the murder mystery plot of it. I love murder mysteries. I love romances, and I love when they are thrown in together. So this was another good one. I thought this was going to be a summer read because of the coastal town, but it's actually a Halloween read. It did take place at Halloween time, and Halloween was talked about a lot. So if you are looking for some spooky romance recs, this is a good one for next month. And then I read Broken French by Tasha Boyd. This is a single father nanny trope romance. This was so cute, wholesome. This is a slow burn. Josie, she is an architect living in South Carolina or North Carolina, I think. She finds herself passed over for a promotion because of sexism in her workplace. So she ends up quitting, and her best friend, who owns like a nanny agency where she does the hiring, she says, hey, I really need to stick somebody with this Frenchman for 6 to 8 weeks. Can you do it? So Josie flies to the south of France. She will be staying on a yacht for 6 to 8 weeks, taking care of his 10-year-old daughter. I loved the relationship between her and the daughter. I loved the relationship between her and him. He was just doing everything he could to try to like fight his attraction and feelings for her. This was just so wholesome. I loved it. And the ending was probably the sweetest damn thing I have ever read in my entire life. Okay, and second to last is Mary Jane. I actually audiobooked this one, and I loved it. So this is a fiction. This is a coming-of-age story about a 14-year-old in the 1970s who finds herself with a summer nanny job. And she has grown up in a very conservative, straight-laced family, and so the family that she ends up nannying for is very hippie, and it's nothing like she's ever experienced or been around in her life. And the father that she nannies for, he's a psychiatrist, and so at the beginning of the summer he actually finds that he has a famous rock star and his wife move in for drug addiction so he can help them throughout the summer. So Mary Jane just finds herself learning new experiences with being around all of these different people, and she has to hide it from her parents because they would never let her continue to go over here and babysit. Izzy, the little girl that she's nannying for, was absolutely hysterical and adorable. This was just such a fun listen. Like, I did a lot of cleaning when I was listening to this, but I couldn't stop. I was so invested. It was just, it was so good, and it was so interesting to hear about that time period and how there were still very, very straight-laced conservative people that were not okay with hippies and all of that going on. It was just a good time. Okay, and can I get a drum roll, please, for the 50th and final book of the summer? And that was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This was my first Tessa Bailey book, actually. I had never read one before. I was actually putting this off because I heard it was insta love. I have heard from some people whose book recommendations that I trust more than others that sometimes Tessa Bailey's writing is really cringy, and I don't like cringy rom-coms. I'm not even a big rom-com person, if I'm honest. I like fantasy and dark romances and more serious tones. So I purposely put this one off, but I fucking loved it. This, you guys know what it's about. It's Schitt's Creek. Piper is rich. She gets in trouble. So she gets sent to Westport, Washington. I live in Washington, by the way. So that was really cool to, have all those aspects to it. But she meets Brendan, who is a fisherman. He's really, really grumpy. This does have insta-love, but I didn't mind it at all. I really, really didn't. This was such an easy, quick read. I will probably read the second one, but I don't know now because a lot of people said there was a lot of slut man shaming in that one, so that's kind of disappointing. But yep, I ended the summer with a bang, and I was happy about it. So, okay guys, so that is going to do it for all 50 books that I read this summer. Yeah, it was a good time. I definitely read some really amazing reads, and I read some really horrible reads. So I'm ready for fall. I'm ready to switch gears and vibes. I'm starting a Zodiac Academy reread, Devil's Night reread. I'm probably gonna vlog those and annotate if you guys are interested in something like that. But yeah, we did it. We got through all 50 books. I apologize for not remembering a lot of the plot. See, I can't even talk. 50 books is a lot to get through. So anyway, we're just gonna close out right here, and I hope everybody's summer ended with a bang. I hope everybody had some kick-ass reads, and let's all crush fall like the bad bitch it is. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!